Yeah. Hello, esteemed guests, respected teachers, and fellow students. I am Arnav Kalgutkar, and I am presenting, along with Aditya Nebrajani, on behalf of the 11 students of the LOS Tara team. LOS, or Lunar Orbit Station Tara, is the Orchid School's entry in the 9th Standard Large Group category to the NASA Ames Space Settlement Contest 2018, in which we won first prize. The NASA Ames Space Settlement Contest, founded in 1994, is a project which requires students to prepare a conceptual study of a fully self-sufficient space station. This helps to inculcate several valuable skills in students, including teamwork, a scientific aptitude, and a methodical approach to solving problems. Plagiarism is forbidden, and all sources must be cited, as in a scientific paper. Go.
This year was the Orchid School's first attempt at the NASA Ames Space Settlement Competition. Work started around a year ago in August and concluded in mid-Feb. Today we'll be giving you an overview of what we did for the whole competition and all the aspects we looked at while designing the station. They're up on the screen right now. The aspects we looked at were location and construction, structure, power and communication, life support, onboard technology, human factors, and economy.
Location, I will be explaining the factors regarding the location of LOS Tara, which is in lunar orbit as evident from the name. We chose lunar orbit instead of Earth or Mars orbit for several reasons. First, Mars orbit can take a ship a few months to reach, and radio communications to Mars can take between 4 and 24 minutes. The Moon, however, takes only days to reach and only 1.3 seconds to communicate with. As compared to low Earth orbit, the Moon also is located further away from the Earth. This gives it a better opportunity to act as a refueling port. LOS Tara has access to the rich resources of the Moon, including rich stores of ice, which can be melted to meet the water demands. It can also be used to make hydrogen and oxygen, which are used as fuel. Now Aditya will explain structure.
Structure is the single most important factor we looked at while designing LOS Tara. Structure defined how the station would look like, how much its occupancy could be, and the zones we'd create, the actual capability of the station to be self-sufficient. So the basic structure of LOS Tara looks like the model over there, which was made by our art team. Could we have a big round of applause for them? Thank you. So the basic structure is a central column called the spire, on which other components are mounted. Now the components mounted to the spire are two hollow cylinders called the sanikas, agriculturi which are within the sanikas. Since the sanikas are hollow cylinders like pipes, the agriculturi are within those on spokes. Setogas are the two spherical balls you can see. They are zero gravity areas and are for experimentation and tourism. And simple, which hasn't been displayed due to its structural complexity, it's actually a spiral which allows variable gravity. Now I'll start by explaining how the sanika works. So how many of you know about centripetal, centrifugal forces? Alright, so a centrifugal force is when there's a rotation and it's a perceived outwards force. Now there is another acceleration called centripetal acceleration which is also outwards. So these sanikas rotate at 1.35 rpm to create this outwards acceleration at 9.8 meters per second squared, which is Earth gravity. These sanikas are contra-rotating. They rotate in opposite directions, one clockwise, one counterclockwise. This creates a gyroscopic stability for the station. Since the total population of LOS Tara is 15,000, each one houses 7,500 people. Also, the sanikas are kind of like cities, so they're designed with blocks in mind. Some blocks are for residents, some blocks are for waste management and so on. These blocks are tiled to create a proper city layout. Next, the agriculturi, they're located within the sanikas, and that's where plants and animals are bred for human consumption and for other purposes related to animals. They rotate along with the Sanikas on the same spokes. The Setogas, their purpose is tourism and science. One of the Setogas is for science. So the science Setoga has a industrial manufacturing area and rooms for experimentation. These are hexagonal shaped rooms inspired by beehives. The other Setoga is for tourism, so it's where tourists come to the station, they experience what life is like in zero gravity, and that creates a source of revenue for the station. Also Simple, our last structural component, is spiral. Simple is also rotating, so since it's spiral, it creates variable gravity zones at every point on its structure. Now, Simple is for all industrial activities of LOS Tara, and for every gravity zone we figure out an activity which can be done there. For example, in low gravity you can do crystal growth and experimentation. In higher gravity you can sediment metals easily, and so on. This is a render made on an open source tool called Blender, so it is basically how the station will look like. The last green block over here, that's the nuclear reactor, which we'll talk about later.
So power of LOS Tara I'm going to be explaining the power of LOS Tara. It's an important factor in the design. Power is required in space for several reasons, these such as heating, cooling, lighting, transportation, industry, robotics, and so on. So power is an essential component of LOS Tara. We calculated it we took each one of the individual demands and we approximated it. It came out to be 450 megawatts, which is quite a lot, but remember this is in space. The power demand can be met by two methods, solar or nuclear. We did not choose solar power because the total panel area would be several square kilometers. This would be really bulky and hard to fix on the station. Also, we require motors to angle it into the sun, otherwise they would not generate as much power. And they can only generate power when LOS Tara is in sunlight. And when it goes behind the moon, it won't receive power, so it can only generate for half its orbit. Batteries would also then have to store power for the other half, which would be extremely heavy and expensive. But a nuclear reactor that is lighter as compared to solar panels, it's compact, it can provide power 24/7, and modern reactors only need to be refueled once in every few years. We chose a reactor type called liquid fluoride thorium reactor, which are currently being developed. India is a major contributor to this field. It is powered using an element called thorium, which India has rich reserves of. And it is not as dangerous as uranium, for example. So life support is also important. It basically makes the inhospitable environment of space habitable and preserves the Goldilocks zone in the middle of extremes. It has several factors such as oxygen management, food production, thermal control, lighting, etc. As Aditya talked about, the agriculture tortoises, which are located inside the main centrifuges to produce food, we chose it has to be as efficient as possible because to avoid wasting water and nutrients, which are scarce in space. We use a hydroponic system, which basically they suspend crops in a liquid medium and nutrients are directly provided. These systems are already on use in Earth for horticulture and all. They are more efficient than normal crops. They provide higher yields and they can be automated more easily. Algae are cultured in special culture tubes. These are used to feed the livestock. As Aditya mentioned, livestock are a valuable source of protein. Oxygen management is also critical. If oxygen is depleted too fast and CO2 builds up too quickly, it can be fatal. And also, in order to produce food, plants also require CO2 for photosynthesis. So we designed a system to take CO2 from the living areas to the plants and O2 from the plants to the living areas. So now another overlooked feature which we've designed is thermal management. As it is on Earth, the sun is quite hot, but imagine the temperature of the sun when there's no atmosphere to block the sunlight. It can quickly reach fatal levels, especially in a structure made out of metal like LOS Tara. So it has it has a heat exchange system to radiate heat, as on other spacecraft and satellites. Behind the moon, it can quickly reach freezing levels due to radiation. LOS Tara will radiate all its heat, so we have to use electric heating to stay warm. And lighting is crucial. We use efficient LED lighting in the shadow of the moon in order to light the station while using as little energy. When we are in sunlight, we'll use mirrors to direct sunlight in so as to save power. To you. Aditya will explain robotics now.
Right. So when we have robotics on LOS Tara, it's to automate the workforce, to use man hours of 15,000 people up there for better purposes than dull, dangerous, or repetitive work. So the robots perform 4 major functions on LOS Tara: maintenance, agriculture, industry, and transportation. So maintenance robots check if the station is being maintained properly. As metal and steel and all sorts of other materials age, their properties change, they lose their strength. To keep a check on all of this, we have robots. These robots are on the outer hull of the entire LOS Tara and within the walls of each of the structures I mentioned previously. Now, these robots are all built on a base called the Traybot. They're modular, in fact. So the Traybot is a basic robot with wheels, a battery, and a microcontroller to connect it to the control center on LOS Tara. And all these robots have kit attachments. So, for example, the maintenance robots have a maintenance kit attachment which has cameras and infrared sensors to figure out if there's a hull breach or a problem in the structure. If it's a small problem, the robot will rectify it using a repairing kit, or it will report it to control and a human will go repair that problem. Now, agricultural robots are there, as the name suggests, in the agricultori. They keep a check on the plants and animals, whether the plants are growing fine, whether they need more nutrients. If they're able to give more nutrients, then they'll do that. They'll add fertilizers. Basically, keep an overall look on how agriculture is happening. Industrial robots are very, very similar to industrial robots on Earth today. They'll do most of the industrial functions in SEMA and in Simple. And they will basically do the dull and dangerous work in space. Transportation Traybots are extremely large robots. They're the buses and trains of the Sanikas. And they also aid in internal transportation throughout the station. I'll be talking about government now. So the government of LOS Tara is democratic. And democracy is a very, very important way to add to the self-sufficiency of a station. For a station to be completely autonomous, people do need to govern themselves. So the democracy has the standard 3 organs of government: the legislature, executive, and judiciary. And citizens elect their representatives to the government.
So now, economics. As you know, space stations cost a lot. But LOS Tara, it has several ways in order to recoup these costs. First, LOS Tara is constructed using materials mined from the moon, like aluminium, silicon dioxide to make the glass, etc. This can reduce the costs by a dramatic measure. There are also several manufacturing industries on board, the 2 main industrial sectors. Like, for example, the spiral, the simple for variable gravity, and the 0G areas for 0G manufacturing. Some industries in the future which are up and coming, like high precision fiber optics, crystal growth, and other precision manufacturing, can only be done in space due to the 0G environment, because otherwise there'd be imperfections due to the gravity of Earth. Lunar resources are very valuable. Have you all heard of helium-3? It came in the news a few days ago. It's basically a fuel that could be used in the future to power nuclear reactors, which can be mined from the moon, and LOS Tara could act as some sort of a port. And also there's water. Water is really an important commodity for spacecraft. Water can be used for drinking, which is important. It can be electrolyzed into hydrogen and oxygen, which oxygen, as we all also know, is very important. And hydrogen and oxygen together can be used as rocket fuel. For example, the space shuttle, it used hydrogen fuel in the big orange tank. Also, space tourism would be another important source of revenue, as Aditya said. Due to the efforts of SpaceX to take the cost of going to space down, in the future space will be accessible even to the middle class, and so LOS Tara can take advantage of the growth in space tourism, and it can act as a port for people who are going to the moon and can see the sights from lunar orbit. And zero gravity research will also be another big field. Companies like pharmaceutical companies and companies developing chemicals and all those, they would have labs on board LOS Tara. They would be leased, because so that way they can research new drugs and compounds in the unique 0G environment. Thank you. So now, does anyone have any questions? We'll take about 3 of them. We'll take 3 questions.
Is there a mic we can pass?
No questions? Does anyone have any questions? Raise your hand if you have a question. Yeah.
Yes.
To fund it. So, by the way, very impressive presentation. Well done.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Absolutely outstanding. You have the economics sorted out from once the spacecraft will be there and you build this entire ecosystem in space. Have you thought about how to fund it, to take it up?
Investments and government capital would be the main sources. Private investments. See, LOS Tara would give a return on investments. It would take a few years, but it would give that. And another thing I forgot to mention was, see, as Earth is getting more populated, people would want to leave the Earth and live in space because it literally has infinite room for growth. LOS Tara can actually be also used to build the next one, so the cost would be halved. So like LOS Tara would first be built, it would cost a lot, but then it would build the second one for a much lower price, and then 2 would become 4 and all. So real estate would also be another big thing as well.
Absolutely. So I would really encourage you guys to package this properly. And NASA is good, it's a good start. But there are other people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos of Amazon. And I really would like you guys to send them this proposal and see what they think.
Thank you.
There might be something that will come out of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Any further questions, maybe from the students?
Students from outside Orchid.
Guests? Yes. Jonathan, someone.
Yeah.
What do you guys do about the debris in space?
Sorry?
The debris.
The debris.
Yeah, because the far side of the moon, the one which is in the dark, it's often bombarded with asteroids and meteorites. And your space station is very big, so it'll take a lot of time to move it from place to place. So how do you intend to take care of that factor?
See, the thing is there are many types of space debris. There are the ones that are either too small to detect, and that too, all spacecraft, they have significant thick hulls, like they even have a Kevlar layer inside. And besides, compared to Earth, the moon has very little space debris. Most of the space debris is artificial, and the moon is largely untouched, and LOS Tara would have systems to prevent the buildup of further debris.
So one thing we actually didn't talk about here was the hull. Now, while there are no large space debris, there is small space debris, and it might be in a great amount. So what we're using for the hull is a many meter thick lunar regolith. So we're actually taking lunar soil.
LOS Tara would be largely built out of cast iron and other cheap metals, because over here weight doesn't matter. Unlike a ship, which if it's too heavy it might sink, weight does not matter because there is no gravity in space. And LOS Tara, unlike a rocket which would need to be light as it needs to maneuver, is largely stationary. However, if there's any big piece of debris coming, LOS Tara would use tiny rocket jets to move. The thing is, even if I move by 1 centimeter per second, or if I do that 1 day in advance, that would be compounded, and I could in fact dodge a large asteroid. Even though it would be at a slow pace, it would still be sufficient, provided there's a heavy radar. And if there's any small piece, as Aditya is saying, the hull would probably just absorb it. The moon is also a lot more pristine than Earth orbit.
All right, one last question and then we'll conclude.
So as I said, you have Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos in America. We have Hanumantrao Gaikwad here in India. So you can even start here, maybe it'll be a faster start.
And students, I believe you have explained it so very well that the questions are not there to be asked, yeah? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can we have a huge round of applause for the NASA team? I would like to request Aditya and Arnav to remain on stage, as we would like to invite the entire LOS Tara team on stage. The members are Arnav Kalgutkar, Aditya Nebrajani, Galav Sharma, Ved Joshi, Arshia Joshi, Dhruv Jadhav, Chinmay Kharche, Shlok Pandey, Ojas Davre, Aryan Deore, and Aditya Deshmukh. We're so proud of you, NASA team. Congratulations on your achievement. You've shown with your determination that the sky has no limit. Thank you for making us so proud.